Hey, folks, I wanted to talk to you a little bit this morning about Chapter 8, which is going to be dealing with campaigns and elections. And I am coming to you today, right now, in what used to be my living room, sitting on an air mattress here in Maryland. So this might be the last time that I actually ever film from Maryland, although I've got to come back a few more times and do a few things to the house. But let me try and address a little bit this morning with campaigns and elections. And I'll go ahead and film a couple of videos today, and I've got some links that I'll be interested in hearing what y'all think about as well. Now, as we get started today, let me juggle my screens and let me pop up the outline for this. And you'll notice in here, bear with me. This is a little bit of a shorter one, but there is some fun stuff that's actually hopefully in here as well. But I'm going to focus on this beginning piece that's going to be dealing with the most democratic country in the world. And you'll notice there that I've got multiple question marks afterwards. Is the United States the most democratic country in the world? Well, the simple answer, and frankly, the political answer for this is yes and no. So why would it not be considered? I suspect if y'all have read the chapter, if y'all have read the chapter, it says in there that the highest turnout has, typically been in the 60s percentage of Americans that are actually registered to vote. Now, over 60 is not bad. When I was in college, and I'm not that old, it was getting to the point where we were sinking down to the level where we might not actually get 50% of the people that were registered to vote voting. It never quite dipped very far below that, but and it's progressively picked up, but we've had some interesting candidates. Trump is really good for political science, and I want to be careful about this because I'm not saying that I like Trump. I'm not saying that I dislike Trump, but I think that Trump has been such a polarizing figure. He gets not only more people to vote, whether it's for him or against him, but he also gets more people to take political science classes because they want to know what the hell's going on. When you think about voter turnout, remember what I said. It's the percentage of registered voters. So our percentage in the 60s is pretty low. It's in the bottom third of the world in terms of voting percentage, which means two-thirds of the world actually votes at a higher percentage than we do. That would seem to suggest that we're not very good at voter turnout. Okay, so that's number one. Now, put this into a couple of different contexts. There are some countries out there where everybody is automatically registered. There are some countries out there where you are legally required to vote or you would face a criminal penalty. Now, the idea of freedom of speech, and let's face it, voting is you exercising your speech. The idea behind freedom of speech is that you've got the right to be able to speak, but you also, frankly, have the right to not say anything at all, which means you have the right in the United States to not vote and not be punished for it. So just kind of keep that thought in mind. Sometimes we might be actually comparing apples and oranges when you think about this idea of voter turnout. But the other piece is, and this started when I was getting to the point where you could actually vote, is that you can actually go and when you get your driver's license, you could register to vote, motor voter. But you're not automatically registered in the United States. So when we say that 60% or 50% or 64% or whatever number you want to throw out is actually voting, what we're really saying is this is of the registered voters, but then there's a really good chunk of people in the United States that are eligible, but they're not actually registered at all. So that number that's in the bottom third really is significantly lower. So kind of keep that thought in mind. Now, the other thing on this, yeah, we are the most democratic country in the world. And I want you to think about this in the context of the number of elections. There's a lot of places in the world where you might vote for a president or you might vote for a political party that picks a prime minister, these kinds of things. But we don't just have federal elections here. We have state elections. We have local elections. We're voting for law enforcement sometimes, depending upon where you are. We're voting for judges, which is something that doesn't happen an awful lot in the world. So understand, we have a larger number of elections. Now, this can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. It can be a good thing in the sense that we have the ability to put an awful lot of people into office. And these are people that would have been chosen by their peers in the community, whether it be, a federal, a state, or a local election. Now, the other side of this, though, is we may know who is running for president. We may know who's running for governor. We might know who's running for mayor. But golly, the more elections that you have, the more people that you have to know about. And, thinking about the United States, do we really know everybody who is running for office? Somehow, I don't know that we really, really do, which means we may actually be casting some completely ignorant votes, meaning we have no idea who these people are that we're voting for. And that can actually be a little bit dangerous. Now, you'll notice up here number of elections, and think about this just in a very basic way. The federal elections are in even numbered years. So right now we're in 2025. Not a whole lot going on. 2026 is going to be a much bigger year for the Congress, for the Senate. 2028, a bigger year for the Congress, but the Congress, the Senate, the House, but also the President of the United States. Now, typically, federal elections have the highest level of turnout. Ironically, federal elections probably have the lowest impact on our lives. So, this is one of these weird dichotomies. We vote the most, where in fact we actually receive the least amount of benefit. Doesn't matter which party ultimately ends up winning the office. The federal elections are multiple levels removed away from our daily lives. Now, you'll notice down here state and local elections. And it says that state and local elections, y'all, are in the odd numbered years. So this 2025, 2023, 2027 going forward, these are going to be more important. Now, this is a point of debate. Some people would actually say that we should have our state and local elections at the same time as we have our federal ones. And if you think about it, if we have our highest turnout when the federal offices are in play, then we may very well have more people voting in the state and local elections if they're combined together. And theoretically, now we would be voting more for the elections that actually impact us the most. Now, if you talk to elected officials, and this is something that I would be curious to see that y'all would ask if we're able to meet with some of these elected officials this semester, would they actually rather it be at the same time? Because I know here in Maryland, there have been a number of elected officials that I've talked to that actually prefer state and local elections being in odd numbered years. Because if you put them together with the federal elections, everybody's going to be paying attention to the federal ads, the federal issues, the federal candidates, and the state and local just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So, again, it seems to me that they should be put together, but the people that have actually been running would actually suggest no, they really shouldn't be. Now, you'll notice up here number three, first Tuesday after the first Monday. This is when federal elections happen. The first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Say that again. The first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Now, you're never going to have a federal election on Monday or Tuesday, November the 1st, because it's got to be the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. There's got to be a Monday first. Not sure quite how they came up with this, but the idea is that this can get a little bit confusing sometimes. Now, a couple of other things, and let me mention this to you. Iowa City, it makes mention on page 296 of the text, and there's a really long chart, all of the people that you could technically vote for in Iowa City. And the number on this is actually 58. If you lived in Iowa City, you're going to have the ability, maybe not every election, but you're going to have the ability over the course of a series of elections to be able to vote for 58 people or 58 different offices. And you'll notice if you look at this, and I'm just going to read a couple of these off. Of course, there's the president, the senators, the House of Representatives, governor, lieutenant governor, state senator, 7 Iowa Supreme Court justices. As we keep going forward, in the county, you get to elect a supervisor, a treasurer, an auditor. In the township, clerk, trustees, school board members, education agency directors, city council members, agricultural extension members, and a soil and water conservation commissioner. Now, especially at the local level, sometimes there were 3, 4, 5, 7, 9 candidates that you were actually going to be picking out of all of the people that are running. But it's just the idea. I mean, do we really have the time? Do we really have the motivation to actually learn 58 different people running for office? I suspect not. So, does this make us a better democracy because we've got more people to vote for? We have more ability to interject our selections into the system, or does this make us a worse economy? In fact, because economy, democracy. In fact, because you know what? If we don't know who we're voting for, then this just gives us more chances to kind of demonstrate our ignorance. And if you got questions about this, think about your own lives. I mean, how much do you really know about people that are running for office? Because many of you that are going to be watching this video have the ability to be able to vote. And maybe even more basic than that, how many of y'all are registered to vote? Because if you're not registered to vote, it doesn't even matter how much you know or you don't know. What matters is that you can't vote because you're not registered. Now, let me leave you with one thing in this section. And the last thing in this section is going to be dealing with this little piece down here at the bottom that is dealing with time, place, and manner. Now, you may be wondering exactly why it is, in fact, that I linked elections with federalism. Well, here's why. Federalism in the earlier videos is the idea that there are multiple levels of government that are ruling over us at the same time. So the federal government's going to have certain powers. The state government is going to have certain powers. The local governments are going to have certain powers. Well, when it comes to elections, the time, place, and manner clause in the Constitution actually says that it is the states that determine the time, the place, and the manner of elections in the state and the local levels. Now, they also are going to determine rules for federal elections as well. So the federal elections are still going to be the first Monday after the first Tuesday in November, but the states are going to be the ones that are actually going to be printing the ballots. They're going to be registering the people. They're going to be counting the votes. State and local government is. So I bring this up to you. This fits within federalism because, frankly, different states have different rules. When Trump lost to Biden, and there were a lot of people that were pretty upset about this, on election night, it looked like Trump won. On election night, it looked like Trump won. Well, the thing that turned that election were the mail in voters. And it was funny because there were a handful of states or so that actually had a significant chunk of votes that came in through the mail, but they counted them after election night. Now, got to be honest, wouldn't it be nice if people voted by mail and then on election day, you already knew how many votes were actually cast for each candidate based upon these mail in ballots? Sure seems like that would be nice. Sure seems like maybe there would have been less angry people. Sure seems like there would be a lot less confusion, and we might actually know who the president of the United States is when we go to bed on election night. But each state is free to pick their own rules. Some states will get these things counted. Some states will not count mail ballots until after, in fact, the actual election day. And when you have different rules and different systems, then it's a lot easier to have some pretty significant confusion. So, y'all, the idea that these are put together is because different states, different local governments are going to have different policies, and it can get very confusing and frustrating, which actually fits in perfectly with this idea of federalism. Y'all, I will stop here and come back in just a second. And now that we got the dry stuff out of the way, let's get into some things that are just a little bit more fun.